Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Okeechobee, Florida. I'm Jeff White. This week on Wavescan, the Voice of America puts a sudden end to many shortwave broadcasts. A historic note about VOA Australia, projected VOA relay stations in Australia. Our rare, unusual, unique QSL's AWR Focus on Asia 2014 annual DX contests. We'll have all the details, as well as our Japan DX report. Word came around June 27th and 28th that the Voice of America and other services of the U.S. International Broadcasting Bureau and the Broadcasting Board of Governors would end some of their shortwave broadcasts very suddenly on June 30th. We received this news from Keith Perrone of PCJ Media in Taiwan, citing a memo provided by Dan Robinson, the VOA's former chief White House correspondent who recently retired. VOA and IBB employees, producers, journalists, and listeners were all caught very much off guard when word leaked out about a management memorandum announcing the sudden end of these transmissions. According to Radio World magazine, the reason was described as U.S. congressional approval of cuts in shortwave broadcasts that were requested by the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which oversees the VOA and IBB. The American Radio Relay League, an amateur radio organization, reported the news this way. They said, "With no public announcement or fanfare, the Voice of America has phased out some 14 hours per day of international shortwave broadcast transmissions, effective July 1st. Another 10 hours of daily cuts have been made to Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and Radio Free Asia broadcasts." A BBG spokesperson, Letitia King, was quoted as saying that the shortwave cuts would not cause any employees to lose their jobs. She said that programming continues to be available through other media, such as Internet and rebroadcasts on local radio affiliates, and that shortwave broadcasts will continue in many languages to key markets, such as North Korea, Nigeria, Somalia, and the Horn of Africa. As published in Thomas Witherspoon's swelling.com, the IBB internal memorandum said, "Because shortwave has been a cheap and effective way to receive communications in countries with poor infrastructure or repressive regimes, it was a good way to deliver information. But broadcasting via shortwave is expensive, and its use by listeners has been on the decline for years. At the BBG, the cost versus impact equation no longer favors broadcasts via this medium to most of the world." Dan Robinson, VOA's ex-White House correspondent, cited many negative reactions from VOA listeners, who said they were given no advance notice of the shortwave eliminations. One listener pointed out the unfortunate timing of the cutbacks, while there is political upheaval in Iraq, Kurdistan, and Syria, especially in the remote areas where there is no Internet available to get VOA news. The IBB memorandum said all shortwave frequencies for English news programs to Asia would be eliminated, including mornings from 1200 to 1600 UTC and evenings from 2200 to 0200 UTC. Radio World published a detailed list of shortwave cuts, which was provided to them by the BBG. They include VOA Azerbaijani, 30 minutes daily on shortwave being cut. VOA in Bangla, 1 hour a day on shortwave being eliminated. VOA English to Asia, 6.5 hours of daily shortwave programming being eliminated as of July 1st. VOA Lao, 30 minutes a day on shortwave being cut. VOA Special English, 5.5 hours a day on shortwave. VOA Uzbek, 30 minutes a day on shortwave. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty Persian, which is known as Radio Farda, one shortwave frequency being eliminated for 6 broadcast hours. Radio Free Asia in Laos, 2 hours a day on shortwave, being eliminated. Radio Free Asia in Vietnamese, 2 hours a day on shortwave, being eliminated. Languages that continue on shortwave include the following. From the Voice of America, they continue on shortwave in Afan, Oromo, Amharic, Tigrinya to Ethiopia and Eritrea. Broadcasts on shortwave will continue in Bambara, Burmese, Cantonese, Dari, English to Africa, English to South Sudan, French to Africa, Hausa, Khmer, Kinyarwanda, Kirundi, Korean, Kurdish, Mandarin, Pashto, Portuguese to Africa, Somali, Swahili, Tibetan, and Shona Ndebele in English to Zimbabwe. Now from Radio Marti, broadcasts on shortwave will continue in Spanish to Cuba. From Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, shortwave will continue in Avar, Chechen, Circassian, Belarusian, Dari, Pashto, Persian, Russian, Tajik, Turkmen, and Uzbek. At Radio Free Asia, shortwave broadcasts will continue in Burmese, Cantonese, Khmer, Korean, Mandarin, Tibetan, and Uyghur. Also, from the Middle East Broadcasting Network, shortwave broadcasts will continue in Arabic.
From Washington, this is VOA News. Iraq's military begins an offensive to retake a prominent city, and Russia says Ukraine would negotiate better without U.S. assistance. I'm Marty Johnson reporting from Washington.
Well, on a historic note, on at least 3 separate occasions, the Voice of America has given serious consideration to the possibility of utilizing shortwave facilities in Australia for the relay of their programming into nearby areas of Asia. As Ray Robinson tells us now from KVOH, even though a series of test transmissions took place on one notable occasion, nothing eventuated from these VOA assessment studies.
During the decisive years of World War II in the Pacific arena, 1944 and 1945, VOA was actually on the air with relay programming from 2 different Australian locations. The first utilised the single 50 kilowatt RCA transmitter, VLC, in Shepparton, Victoria, which carried American programming beamed to the Philippines under the title The Philippine Hour. Then, during the same era, the American ship Apache set sail from Sydney heading north and was on the air at times to the Philippines with American VOA and AFRTS programming from 2 Australian-made transmitters on both medium wave and shortwave under the American call sign WVLC. Note the similarity of the call signs, VLC Shepparton and WVLC Apache. After the war, these broadcasts ended, but around 1961 or so, the Voice of America conducted a series of test broadcasts from sites within Australia and from an Australian island in the Indian Ocean. The island location was Christmas Island, but the Australian mainland locations are not known. There are 2 islands named Christmas. One is in the Pacific and the other is in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean Christmas Island was discovered and named by Captain William Miners aboard the ship Royal Mary in 1643, and at that time the island was uninhabited. It's a small island with an irregular shape located between Indonesia and Australia, with a total area of just 52 square miles. The island is the flat top of an underwater mountain, and the highest elevation is just a little over 1,000 feet. Although no specific details are known regarding the VOA test transmissions from Christmas Island, now over half a century ago, it's probable the broadcasts were made in collaboration with the Australian communication station there, which was on the air under the call sign VLU. No specific locations are identified as the sites for the VOA test broadcasts from the Australian mainland around the same time, although Darwin in the Northern Territory, Carnarvon, Northwest Cape, and Wanneroo in Western Australia are all likely possibilities. During World War II, America operated a Navy base near Darwin, and by the time of the series of the broadcasts, America was also in the planning stage for a NASA space station at Carnarvon and a huge Navy station at Northwest Cape. It's also probable that the 50-kilowatt shortwave transmitter VLX-VLW at Wanneroo near Perth was utilised for the tests. Whatever were the now unknown locations for the 1961 VOA test broadcast from the Australian mainland, it would seem that they escaped detection by international radio monitors anywhere in the world. 20 years later, VOA again demonstrated an interest in establishing a shortwave relay station in Australia, and the two possible locations once again were Darwin and Northwest Cape. By this time, the early 1980s, the Radio Australia relay station on Cox Peninsula, across the bay from Darwin, which had been in use for regular coverage into Asia, was still being rehabilitated following the devastating Cyclone Tracy, which had destroyed most of the city of Darwin at Christmas 1974. There were questions about the wisdom of rebuilding the station in that location, but eventually it was reactivated by Radio Australia in September 1984, and it never was used by the Voice of America. The other possibility involved the US Navy base at Northwest Cape, on the Indian Ocean coastline of Western Australia. The Navy transmitter station there, NWC, was in regular use in the 1980s as a communication station for American submarines and surface vessels, and the VOA gave serious consideration to co-siting a shortwave relay station there. However, that too was not to be. And then nearly 20 years later again, in 1997, Radio Australia ended its use of the shortwave facility near Darwin due to budget cuts. Several international radio broadcasting organisations showed an interest in using it as a part-time relay station. Among the organisations that approached the Australian government were the BBC in London, Deutsche Welle, and the Voice of America and Radio Free Asia in Washington, D.C. But that didn't happen either. Instead, the Darwin station was sold to Christian Voice, who operated it for about a decade. Eventually, though, there was a decision in the Australian courts that the land on which the station was built had to be returned to Aboriginal groups, so the CVC usage came to an end in mid-2010 and the station was closed and dismantled.
Well, thank you very much, Ray Robinson from KVOH in Los Angeles. Wavescan presents Focus on Asia, a year-long series of reports about shortwave broadcasting and listening on the continent of Asia. Well, as Adventist World Radio enters into its 43rd year of international radio broadcasting, we take pleasure in announcing our annual Wavescan DX contest, which comes to you under the title Rare, Unusual, Unique QSLs. In short, you're invited to check your collection of QSL cards and letters for rare, unusual, and unique QSLs from shortwave, medium wave, and communication stations throughout the world. You're also invited to log AWR programming to Asia on shortwave, medium wave, or FM during the month of September 2014. Now, here are the details of our 2014 Rare, Unusual, Unique QSLs, AWR Focus on Asia Annual DX Contest. Part A, Rare, Unique, and Unusual QSL Cards and Letters. You're invited to make a list of what you consider to be your rare, unique, or unusual QSL cards or letters in your QSL collection. Perhaps no one else in the world has a QSL verifying some transmissions that you have verified. Your list of QSLs can show any number of different rare, unique, or unusual QSLs up to a total of 5 QSLs. Your QSLs may verify a wrong transmission channel or an emergency broadcast due to flood, fire, earthquake, turmoil, etc., or a transmission from an emergency transmitter, or test broadcasts, or first broadcast or last broadcast, unusual propagation, etc. These QSLs can be from any shortwave broadcasting station or shortwave communication station or medium wave station located in any country, anywhere in the world. Amateur QSLs nor CB QSLs are not valid for this contest. Now let's go to Part B. Details of rare, unique, and unusual QSL cards and letters. Please state very briefly, no more than one paragraph for each, why you consider each item in your list of QSLs is rare, unique, or unusual. You're invited to provide a photocopy of each of the QSLs that are on your list in Part A. Preferably, these photocopies should be in color, though black and white copies may be acceptable. Now, Part C of the contest. AWR reception reports. You're invited to prepare 3 reception reports for the broadcast on shortwave, medium wave, or FM of any AWR Asian programming. These broadcasts from Adventist World Radio may be from shortwave, medium wave, or FM stations located anywhere in Asia or on nearby Asian islands, or AWR programming beamed into Asia on shortwave from other countries. Part D of the contest, an Adventist photograph. You're invited to visit a unit of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination in your country and take a photograph of it, preferably in color, though black and white can be acceptable, and submit 1 picture with your contest entry. And Part E, 3 radio cards. Where possible, you're invited to include 3 radio cards for the Indianapolis Heritage Collection with your contest entry. These cards may be old or new, and they may be QSL cards, reception report cards, or picture cards of radio stations, etc. Not valid for this contest are amateur cards nor CB cards. Now some other contest details. You have just heard the main details for our Wavescan 2014 Rare, Unusual, Unique QSLs AWR Focus on Asia Annual DX Contest. The contest will run through the month of September 2014, and all contest entries should be postmarked at your local post office anywhere in the world on any date up to the end of the month of September, and they should be received at the AWR post office address in Indianapolis no later than the end of the month of October 2014. Partial and incomplete entries are considered valid. Post your entry with all items to Adventist World Radio in Indianapolis. We'll give you the address in a moment, remembering that neatness and preparation will all feature in the judging procedure. Due consideration will also be given to the area of the world in which the contestant lives. Where possible, please enclose return postage in the form of currency notes in any international currency, or mint postage stamps. Please note that IRC coupons are too expensive for you to buy, and they are no longer valid in the United States. Please enclose your postal address label also. The awards for the 2014 AWR Rare, Unusual, Unique QSLs AWR Focus on Asia Annual DX Contest will be similar to all previous contests. There will be a special award for the world winner, one of the Jerome Berg Radio History books, and World Radio TV Handbook 2015 for each continental winner. In addition, there will be other special awards as well as AWR souvenirs and radio curios for many participants. You can remember that all AWR reception reports will be verified with a specially endorsed AWR QSL card. Please remember that it will take a period of many months, well into the new year 2015, to process all of the contest entries and reception reports, but each will in due course be processed. The only address for the Rare, Unusual, Unique QSLs AWR Focus on Asia Annual DX Contest is QSL DX Contest, Adventist World Radio, Box 29235, Indianapolis. That's spelled INDIANAPOLIS, Indiana, INDIANA, 46229, USA. That address again is QSL DX Contest, Adventist World Radio, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA.
listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Send your comments and reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the United States. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the USA. Or you can email us at wavescan@awr.org. Our email once again, wavescan@awr.org.
Let's go now to Yukiko Tsuji in Tokyo with her Japan DX report.
Hello and welcome to the DX Report of the Month from Japan Shortwave Club, aided by Toshi Otake, and I'm Yukiko Tsuji. We have several DX reports from our club members this week. NHK World Radio Japan was heard on 13650 kHz on May 29th from 0800 to 0900 UTC in Japanese. SIO rating was 453. This was one segment of the temporary 24-hour broadcast in Japanese for Japanese residents in Thailand in order to inform news under unstable political conditions in Thailand. This was conducted from May 23rd through June 18th. Beibu Bay Radio from China was heard on 5050 kHz on May 29th from 1255 to 1305 UTC in Vietnamese. SIO rating was 353. Local pop music and the talk program were broadcast. IDs in several languages, including English, were given at 1300. ABC Northern Territory service from Catherine, Australia, was heard on 5025 kHz on June 3rd from 1025 to 1050 UTC in English. SIO rating was 343. The programs heard were Jazz till 10:30, then ABC News. The parallel frequency 4835 kHz was SIO rating 352. Radio Australia from Shepparton was received on 9710 kHz on June 4th from 0850 until fading out at 0903 UTC in English. SIO rating was 332. Talk program was aired. Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation from Trincomalee was heard on 13650 kHz on June 6th from 0530 to the sign-off at 0559 UTC in English. This was a special transmission for HFCC International Disaster Relief Project. Vatican Radio was received on 21840 kHz on June 6 from 0500 to the sign-off at 0529 UTC in English. SIO rating was 252. This was also a part of a special transmission for HFCC International Disaster Relief Project. BBC via Davaya, UAE was heard on 9410 kHz on June 4th from 1900 to 2000 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. They aired world news, followed by a focus on Africa at 1906, World Business Report at 1933, and from our correspondent at 1950. Bible Voice broadcasting via Tarata Volondri, Madagascar, was heard on 21480 kHz on June 8th from 1118 to 1145 UTC. SIO rating was 353. Eternal Good News in English was broadcast until 11:30, then Lamp of Hope started in Japanese. Radio Uganda was heard on 4976 kHz on May 30th from 2040 to 2100 UTC in vernacular language. SIO rating was 353. Music program was on the air. ID was given frequently as UBC Radio. WEWN from Vandiver, USA was heard on 11520 kHz on May 30th from 0920 to 0940 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. Pre-each program was broadcast and ID was given at 0930. Finally, Japan Shortwave Club will issue the QSL cards for the correct reports on a segment of Wavescan program. We are issuing QSL card by email to the report sent by email. Our address for your email report is jswcqsl@live.jp. I repeat, jswcqsl@live.jp. We continue to issue the printed QSL card by the same system as before. Your report should be addressed to JSWC, PO Box 44, Kamakura, which is Kamakura, postal code 248-8691, Japan. $1 ILC or $2 for return postage will be appreciated. For this edition of DX Report, we would like to thank Mr. Iwao Nagatani, Mr. Satoshi Ueyama, Mr. Nozomi Matsunaga, Mr. Eiji Asaoka, and Mr. Chiaki Shimada for sharing the information with us. Thank you for listening, and please join us for our next edition of DX Report of Japan Shortwave Club. I am Yukiko Tsuji in Tokyo.
Thank you very much, Yukiko.
This is the African Music Mix on the Voice of America.
And we end today's Wavescan with some African music from the African Service of the Voice of America. Thanks for listening to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Adrian Peterson. Next week, the Calcutta Story. American radio stations in Calcutta. The world's most valuable postage stamp, and our Philippine DX report. Reminder that we have several QSL cards available for your reception reports on Wavescan. Send your AWR and KSDA reception reports for Wavescan to the AWR address in Indianapolis, and also to the station your radio is tuned to, WRMI or WWCR or KVOH, or to the AWR relay stations that carry Wavescan. The address for your reports is Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's also the address for your entries in the annual AWR Wavescan DX contest. If you'd like to contact us via email, our address here is wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White, this week at WRMI's Okeechobee Studios. Till next week, goodbye, everyone.